Another fake Trump interim United States attorney quits, resigns, is forced out because they've been exposed as a fake United States attorney. We're seeing federal judges assert themselves across this country right now in various districts, saying that Donald Trump keeps appointing these fake interim United States attorneys who are allowed to keep their job for a 120-day period. Their term can be either made official if they're confirmed by the Senate, or their term can be extended if the federal judges of that district extend their term. But Trump is picking people with zero federal prosecutorial experience who are not qualified for this position, in my opinion, and the opinion of many other legal scholars, and the opinion of the federal judges who are not extending their interim term. Donald Trump is not able to put qualified candidates for this United States attorney positions before the United States Senate. And so finally, they're basically like being evicted because they were like squatting. They like, despite court orders saying that you're not allowed to hold this position, and you've seen this over and over again, they've refused to like leave. We saw this, for example, with Alina Habba in the District for New Jersey. And finally, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals said, Alina Habba, you got to go. We are ordering you to leave right now. Despite the fact that federal judges said that she was disqualified, the way the Trump DOJ says, oh, just because we're disqualified and deemed to be unlawfully interim United States attorneys, that doesn't mean you said that we have to leave. So it took the Third Circuit to say, no, get out. You're evicted, leave. Now, the Delaware federal courts also, they report to the Third Circuit Court of Appeal. So when the Third Circuit Court of Appeal said, Alina Habba, you gotta go, even though they don't mention the Delaware federal prosecutor's name, the writing was on the wall that you're evicted too, basically. You gotta go, leave. And so this person named Julianne Murray, who was the interim United States attorney for the District of Delaware, she announces that she is resigning. And it's like a very whiny resignation letter. For 15 years, I fought for the rights of residents of Delaware, both in and out of the courtroom. Being chosen by Trump to serve as the United States Attorney for Delaware was an opportunity to continue to serve Delaware, but with a greater impact. I approached every day in a non-political, collaborative manner. She says, political affiliation was never a consideration in achieving the goal during my tenure. And then she goes on to say, I naively believed that I would be judged on my performance and not politics. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The highly politicized, flawed, blue slip tradition is costing Delaware a U.S. attorney and is affecting the country as a whole. Then she says, Senator Coons and Senator Blunt Rochester refused to return a blue slip for political reasons, not performance reasons. This is not about advice and consent, but this is an incredibly flawed tradition. As a result of the Third Circuit's ruling, I have decided to resign as the acting United States attorney for the District of Delaware, she says. Now, her term didn't get extended, though, by the judges. But when you look at what her statement is, you're probably like, what do you mean she served the people of Delaware before this? Well, before this, she served as the Republican Party of Delaware chair. So she was the head of the Republican Party there, not the people of Delaware. She ran for governor of Delaware and lost previously. She was, again, the chairwoman of the Republican Party of Delaware. I looked at her LinkedIn. She was an attorney general candidate in September 2021, but lost. And, she ran a law firm. It looks like she ran a small law firm, Murray Phillips, PA, Murray Law, LLC. I'm not suggesting that. And I looked at her background. I don't see anywhere, at least in what she posted publicly, that she was a federal prosecutor before, that she worked through the ranks. And so, we're seeing again people here that have no federal prosecutorial experience, but she was the chair of the Delaware Republican Party who happened to be a lawyer. So Trump's like, you do it. Alina Habba had no experience as a federal prosecutor. Trump's like, you do it. You have the Lindsey Halligan out of the Eastern District of Virginia, like even worse than the other two I just mentioned. Zero experience, like nothing even remotely close. And Trump's like, you'll be the leader. You have the guy in the Northern District of New York, even the lead federal prosecutor out of the Southern District of New York. I mean, he led like the SEC under Trump's first administration, but doesn't have federal prosecutorial background. So I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds Substack, Talking Feds podcast, and Talking Feds YouTube channel. Harry was actually a United States attorney. And it wasn't like one day they were like, Harry, you want to be a U.S. attorney, my guy? Harry like clerked for 2 different Supreme Court justices. He went to the top law schools. He worked in the federal prosecutor's office for many, many years with distinction, built an experience set, and then became a qualified person to eventually get the job. Like, you have all these people, Harry, they quit, they resign, they whine, pity me. And we'll talk a little bit later, and you will, about Lindsey Halligan and what's going on there. But it's like this like pity party. And it's like, look, at the end of the day, you didn't get you weren't prohibited from getting the blue slip approval process because you're a Republican. The people get appointed in all administrations from the other party. The issue was you were never a federal prosecutor. You didn't know what you were doing. And so if you were qualified and you had the position, then maybe people would look at it differently. Harry, what do you make of this all?
Yeah. So first, that is the point. This scheme that they continue to violate has a reason behind it, a good government reason. And it basically says, stick someone in there while you get your act together. And then all you have to do is nominate and confirm. And that means like a valid candidate his party controls. It shouldn't be all that hard, but you want some minimal kind of competence. Lindsey Halligan really is like absolute zero, right? Has never stepped foot inside a prosecutor's office. And this woman, I think, has no federal prosecutorial experience either. And so the scheme is, and it's a sensible, good government one. Now the court appoints, and then you make your submission to the Senate. And if you do something that's not professional, that's where the Senate comes in. Now, notice what she's actually getting all churlish about. It's the blue slip process. So there are, Senator Coons says, I'm not going to approve her. And there is, you can take issue with it. And Trump is, this is what's now coming up with Lindsey Halligan, who they've now actually nominated to be U.S. attorney. No way in the world she's going to get there. And for starters, she won't even get to the floor because so unqualified is she that the Democratic senators from Virginia will not submit the blue slips. Now, that's one of the few remaining tools that senators who have basically surrendered again and again and genuflected to Trump are eager to keep. They like that little prerogative, Republicans and Democrats alike. Trump had already took a run at Senator Grassley, who's the head of the Judiciary Committee, saying, get rid of it. And they said, we like it. This gives us certain powers within our state. Now, I wonder what the hell he's thinking with Halligan, because she can't get there even on a merits vote. But maybe this is a way, along with what's happening in Delaware, to have a sort of popular frontal attack on the whole blue slip process. But when she, stands up and, as you say, gets all sulky about it, what she's really saying, Coons, by the way, lawyer, Yale Law School, very well respected. They often let people from the other party through, but their job, as long as a blue slip exists, is not to just completely, permit a political hack to take that office. That's the way it's supposed to run. The court is supposed to appoint. So, in a funny way, her kind of churlish farewell really is an implicit criticism of the whole Trump, because she says, I've always been apolitical. I don't care what party, et cetera. And you have Alina Habba, who said, I want to have this job to help turn New Jersey red. Lindsay Halligan, who, went in to get these scalps of his political opponents, who both of those folks, and same with Northern District of New York, Southern District, or Central District of California, people who are clearly there as political attack dogs. So when this, these complaints from the Delaware candidate really sort of underscore that they're doing it wrong, and they're doing it wrong under the law, which is complicated. But more than that, they're doing it wrong the way it's supposed to be. Is if you can get someone through the political process, even a boob sometimes happens, fine. But if you can't, then we're not going to have we're not going to let you do an end around the advice and consent process by just putting in any political loyalist. That's all they're thinking of with a Halligan and a Habba, and just prevent the Senate from weighing in, not to mention the important role that they're just ignoring and take umbrage at of the district court until this happens. So, every time we get another person falling based on this, we explain again the labyrinthine legal problem, but there's just a bigger policy problem that they're trying to get these, hacks in there to do his bidding, and the process is there in large part to prevent it. So when it operates not just to empower the Senate or the blue slip process of Democratic senators who have that much power in the Trump administration, but really the people who you want these offices. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. My professional qualifications were not that different from those of my colleagues, and we were therefore, really steeped in the notion of making decisions based on the law, public safety, and the like. You make a lot of decisions. There's a lot of discretion what cases to bring, and you want to make them in a way that serves the people, not that serves the president, especially this president. So all the heads that roll here they're not just political scalps. They are very much in the service of a good government scheme and the people's interest in having the laws enforced in a way that promotes public safety.
Right. I mean, just even look at the Eastern District of Virginia for a moment, where you had Trump's first pick, who was the interim United States attorney, was a guy named Eric Siebert, who spent over a decade in that office, was a career prosecutor, was a Republican, ideologically viewed Republican Federalist Society and had those views, but was viewed by the two Democratic senators in Virginia as someone who can carry out the office because this person had a background at the Eastern District of Virginia handling the top cases and rose through the ranks. And the Democrats said, look, we can't object to this guy. So Siebert would have gotten a full confirmation vote, and he would have not become an interim. He would be the United States attorney right now for the Eastern District of Virginia. But Donald Trump said to him, I need you to go after my enemies. I don't care if there's no case. You got to go after Comey and James and Schiff and all these people. And Eric Siebert said, look, I've been in this office for a long time. I'll be happy to look into the case, but there's no crimes there. And so having looked into it, having seen no crimes, it's rejected. And so, no, I'm not going to compromise that, because then I compromise the office in general. So then Trump fired the guy. And you only get one interim pick. And then Trump put Halligan. Now he wants, after all the things that Lindsay Halligan's done wrong, from being unlawfully appointed in the first place to now we know all the misconduct that engaged in the grand jury room and just how horrible she is, despite the fact even that she shouldn't even be there in the first place. I mean, she's no Federalist experience, just the worst possible person in terms of qualifications. Now she's not going to get the blue slip, not because she's a Trumper or it's because she's not qualified. And she's already also demonstrated that with this position, she couldn't handle it. And she did a horrible job. Alina Habba, maybe she shows up and doesn't start going after the mayor of Newark and then dismissing the case. And maybe, she says, look, I'm going to handle this in a way, and impresses the judges, and they extend her term also. But no, I mean, she brought the office down to her very low level, and people said, no, we're not going to give you a chance. And, this person in Delaware, you look at the background and it's very partisan Republican. Like, these people would never get in a Biden administration or an Obama or a George W. Bush. These type of people don't get the job. You pick a former federal prosecutor who's risen up the ranks, or maybe a former top state attorney general, not someone who loses the election, someone who was a top person, and maybe they go get the job. But that's what bugs me about this most, Harry, and I'll give you the final word, is that this debate will be treated as partisan when it's actually really not. Because as Eric Siebert showed, he's a Republican. I'm fine with him. The Democrat, he would have been confirmed. But it's viewed in a way that, it's because I'm Trump. No, it's because you're picking people consistent with your low moral character, as opposed to picking people qualified for the job.
And even a little worse, picking people who will be his Roy Cohn and do his dirty work. Look, when I became United States Attorney, there were 2 Republican senators. I would not have been the choice of either one, but they recognized, that I was within the sort of range of professional qualifications. One of them, actually, Rick Santorum, very conservative guy, later blocked me from a judicial nomination and appointment. Best thing that ever happened to me, but that's a whole different story. But the professional understanding was, I'm, solid and will run the office responsibly and professionally. That was the inquiry. That's always been the inquiry, more or less. There's been a few crazed senators like Jesse Helms when he was, holding court, who would be tyrannical about it. But people understand this notion of, we want pros in there. It's all in all in the interest of the people that each party advances someone who's going to call it straight. That's all we're talking about, applying the law and calling it straight. And it's the arch politicization by the Trumpists who want to put in people who think first about Trump, second about Trump, third maybe about the law, maybe not. And that's the real problem here. And, they're getting their comeuppance, which we could have been surprised about. We ought to be heartened by, and we'll see if it happens. But in general, this whole Halligan, Haba, and a couple other states, it's really going against them. The dominoes are falling, and that's a good thing.
Harry Litman runs the Talking Feds YouTube channel, the Talking Feds podcast, and Substack. Everybody, make sure you subscribe to all the Talking Feds properties and subscribe to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel as well. Thanks, Harry.
Hey, thanks, Ben.
New Meidas merch. Head to store.meidastouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.meidastouch.com.